Hello and welcome back to this series about creating a wireless mic in Blender. This is the part 2 and will be the conclusion of this series where we basically add materials to the model that we created in the first one. So without interruption, let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing I want to do is look at the model that we worked on here. And let me go ahead before we take off and let me make sure to turn screencast on. Here we go. And I'm gonna come back out here. Actually, I don't need the end panel on right now, I don't think. So let's go ahead and start taking a look at some of this stuff. So I'm gonna go ahead and go to cycles. And everything is pretty much like it was yesterday. And what I wanna do is I wanna come in here and I wanna take a quick look at a couple of things. The first thing I wanna do is I wanna tackle the body here, and then maybe the spring inside the clip, and then the screen, and then wrap it all off with the fur filter or the wind filter up there at the top for the mic. So let's go ahead and do the following. I'm going to pull up the timeline here at the bottom, and I'm going to change this over to the shader editor. I'll close out the side panel there, and I'm going to click on the body of the microphone, and I'm going to go down here to materials, and what I want to do is I want to create a new material, and let's call it material dot body. Right, so now if we look in here where the nodes are, we can see that we have something different here going on. Right, so the first thing I want to do is I want to really think about how I want this to look. So in looking at the actual reference photo, it's pretty much like a I wouldn't say it's satin, but it's it's got some roughness, but it's not real glossy, like just a normal black plastic. There's very, very tiny like a bump texture to it. So let's go ahead and create something similar to that. So I want to go ahead and I want to put in a texture for the bump here. Just give me a second. And let's do a color here. And the color I found, I'm looking at it off screen here. So let me just copy. I'm gonna copy this hex value in here, and then that way you guys can copy it from the video. It's almost like a charcoal gray. So I'll leave it up there for a second so you guys can see that hex value and copy it if you want to follow along. Also, the roughness I left at 50%, and that's pretty much the only change I made here. So let's go here, and this is material black. So now it needs that little bit of a texture. So one thing I want to do here is I want to bring in a bump node. I want to bring in a color ramp also, and I want to bring in a noise texture. So I'm going to take the factor from the noise texture, run it into the factor of the color ramp, run the color from the color ramp into the height of the bump, and then I'm going to take bump and the normal from the bump and run it into normal on the principal shader. So let's do a couple things. Let's go ahead and tackle the noise texture. And actually, you know what? I'm running Node Wrangler, so I'm going to hit Control T and bring in my mapping and my texture coordinate node. And that's in the event we want to change these bumps. We can see a little bit right here. Let me get the mic over into the light a little bit. You see like these weird ridges, looks like a raisin almost. We don't want that. So let's crank this up, the scale up to 400. And so now it looks more like a texture. You could use this for leather or something like that as well, and depending on what you're working on. I'm gonna take the detail, I'm gonna crank it up from 2 to 12. And I want to take the white value of the color ramp and move it about halfway across the gradient. And the number I actually did was 0.486. And then the strength is way too much, so let's crank that down to 0.111, and we're going to leave the distance at 1. And now we have our texture. for the body. So before we get too far ahead of ourselves, you can kind of see it in the lighting here. All right. So before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's go ahead and look at the back here. And I'm doing all this in cycles. And notice we don't have the clamp here. The clip doesn't have that material. So let's click that base for the clip. You can either do it here in the texture coordinate, but the materials preview, or you can go down here on the side and do it here as well. And let's do material body. Let's pick the bottom clip. Let's do the same thing. Let's pick the top clip. Let's do the same thing. Okay. So now we've applied that same material to all of those portions of the model here. Now notice we have not done the spring. We're going to do it separately. While I'm in here, let's zoom out a little bit. Might make this a little easier to see. I'm going to go back to viewport shading mode. I'm going to hit the front. Let's move this down a little bit so we can work up here. And the next thing I want to do is I want to create a new material. So under material body, I'm going to click the plus and I'm going to hit new. So we're going to create a new material. I'm going to call this material.screen. Did I type screen right? I think I got screen. Put a C in there. Screen. And what I want to do with material.screen is that's going to be the shiny plastic that is on the front of the model here. So let's go click on the body. We're going to go to face select mode, and I want to select these faces here all the way down like so. If you happen to want to remember this, then as I've shown in other videos, we can go here, create a vertex group. I'm gonna call it screen and hit assign. That way, if we come out of here and we don't select it and we want to get it back, I can just hit select and bring that selection right back. It saves us time essentially. So now that we've got it selected, there's a couple things I want to do. I created some artwork in Illustrator. You could also use Inkscape, which for me personally is painful, the open source version of Illustrator, or you could use Affinity. You could also use Affinity Designer, which is a great piece of software, excellent alternative to Illustrator. Or you could use, actually DaVinci Resolve will do this as well. If you go into a Fusion panel, you can actually make vector art, which might be a little challenging. I haven't tried it, but I've seen other people do it, so it's an option. But Illustrator is what I know the best because I've used it in my career for many decades. So got a piece of artwork that I brought in. Let's go ahead, pull this panel back up. Let's go back to the material panel here. And you know what? I don't think, let's create this again because for some reason I lost it. So I'm gonna call it material screen. There we go. So now we got it back. I'm gonna hit assign because it's gonna assign this selection up here to this material down here. So material screen's got a principal BDSF, BSDF, I should say. The first thing I want to do is I want to bring in an image texture. I'm going to bring in 2 image textures. Let's move these out a little bit. And I also want to bring in my mapping and my texture coordinate. And let's just grab this to this and bring it straight in. I'm going to hit open, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up here to my textures, and let's use the PNG. Let's change this to clip, and let's turn this over to cycles. And notice when I come out, we see some craziness going on right here, right? And now because it's been assigned, I don't need to stay in edit mode with it selected. I've already signed it, so whatever we change this material will just automatically reflect here. So all we've done thus far is we've told this material, like, hey, I want this image in here, and here are the coordinates that I want it in. But what we need to do is we need to UV map it. So I'm going to go over to UV editing tab in Blender, zoom in a little bit, and what I want to do is I want to go back here. I'm going to hit select, right? And then I want to come up here and I want to click on the icon where you can see your images. And then I'm going to click on my artwork that I had opened up in the shader tab. It'll automatically be selected for pulling up into Blender. And either you should already see the selection in here, or you can hit U, unwrap, and let's just do, let me see which one I want to use. I'm gonna do a cube projection. Let's see what we get. Yeah, that looks really good here. So we might have to zoom out and play with it a little bit. I'm gonna hit A, and let's change my viewport over here. Let's go to look dev. Might take a second. Okay. So I got A over here, and then I want to scale this up by quite a bit because I want these icons to be right, let's see, right in here. And you can eyeball it on your end if you'd like. See, and now when we look at the model, the icons are perfectly seated in there. So now what I want to do is come back out. Let me go ahead and save my file. And if we look at our model here, we see that let me drag this down so you guys can see it a little bit better. We see that we have the icons on the screen, and you can also see when you get in here, that looks pretty good. So, but we're not quite done yet because this plastic is a lot smoother. So one thing I want to do is I want to go up here and change the roughness, the value, let's try 0.214. I'm going to drag this back down again, and I want you to see the difference now. See the difference? It's a lot shinier where those icons are versus the actual body of the unit. All right. And let's see. Let's do something else. One other thing I want to do is I want these icons to glow. I want them to light up and emit light from them. So this is why we brought down this second image here. So what I want to do is I'm going to hit the browse for image to be linked, and I'm going to pick that same image. However, what I want to do here, see where it says 2? I want to click on that because it's going to make its own instance out of this. I want this one to be non-color. And I also want, from repeat, I want that change to clip. But one thing I want to do here is different. I want to take the node from color, and I want to run it up into the color of emission. Okay, and then I'm going to change the strength here to 2. And we notice up here at the top something just changed. So we got a white square up here, basically, or a white rectangle up here, I should say. That's not quite what I want. What I want is the actual white icons to be the things that are emitting the light. So we gotta play with this a little bit to tell Blender what specifically should be lit up. And the way we're gonna do that is by creating a mask up here. So what I want to do in order to do that is I want to bring in a mix shader. Not a mix shader, but a mix color node, and I'm going to place it between the texture image that goes into the base color. And what I want to do is I want to take the color from that image and run it into B, and then I want to take the alpha from that image and run it into the factor, right? And then for this A color here, I'm going to just drag this all the way down to black. Okay. All right, I very quickly now see where my issue is. So I should not have run color, I should run alpha. There we go, the places where it's transparent, because it was a PNG that we brought in. So that's why we weren't seeing the change there. So you can't really tell that these icons are lit up yet. So in order to get like a nice little glow effect, so when the user or your audience sees this image, they can very quickly see that something is glowing. So we need to do that in the compositor. All right, so let's go over to the compositing tab up here. We hide that. And I want to click on this little option here. It says use nodes. Now, granted, we're not going to see anything because we have not done a render yet. So given that, you're just going to have to trust me on this one. I'm going to create a viewer. The viewer, what it does is it's a node that's going to show the rendered image up here on the screen so we can actually see it change in real time. Let's go ahead and just do a quick partial render here. Let me go back. Let me go back here. And I've got a camera. I actually have two cameras. Let me do the regular camera here. I'm gonna select it. You don't have to worry about having two cameras. You don't need two cameras. I just had two cameras for this file. And I'm gonna move one camera here. Just give me 1 second here. Okay, I've got the other camera set up so that we can see this once it's all done. So I'm going back to compositing. Going to hit F12 to render. Now it's going to render off of camera 1, not camera 2. And all I really need is I need enough samples in there just to see what this is going to look like, so that we can finish off the glow effect or the haloing effect or blooming effect. I've heard it called all different things. For those icons. And the way this typically works is you don't need to do the full render, you just need to do enough of it. And then when I go here and then I unplug that and plug it back, now we get something to work with. Okay, so we're good there. And let's go ahead and bring in a new node. I want to bring in a glare node. Plug it in between the render layers and the composite / viewer. Like I said, didn't mean to do that. Give me 1 second, guys. The only reason why I brought that in, the view node here, is so we can actually see our work as we're working on it. So as you can see, the icons already look different, but I don't want streaks. I'm gonna go down to fog glow. So I'm gonna leave the mix at 0, the size at 8, and the medium setting for the quality, because high, in my opinion, is just a little too defined in some cases. You just don't even notice it. So I'm going to change the threshold to 0.020. Okay. And I want to do something else. Okay, I've already done it. So I cranked down on my HDRI. I cranked down the strength to like 50%, just to make it a little darker in the shadows. Tell you what, let's do this while we're in here. Let me go back to layout. So we're good here. Compositor is good. So these are the settings I want. I'm gonna go back to layout, and I'm gonna use this other camera. Now feel free, if you would, feel free to use whatever kind of camera angle you want. I just picked one for the thumbnail, but you guys know how to work the camera. So this is not a tutorial on using a camera. This is a tutorial on how to build and texture this mic. So I basically made a camera for you that just kind of shows, it's a front orthographic view, I believe, is what I based it off of. So let's go ahead and let's do another render real quick. And you're gonna see those icons lit up. And then once we're done with that, we'll check that off the list, and then we'll go back and then we'll do the spring in the back. And then we'll finish everything off with doing the wind filter at the top. So what you'll notice is it's just rendering everything and we don't see any glow yet. That's because Blender runs those effects after the render is finished to the compositor. It kind of layers it on afterwards. All right, so just bear with me. Let the little music play in the background while that's going, so you guys can just kind of watch how long it usually takes on this particular machine for something to render. This is a little bit of dead space time here. You can just kind of watch it. I want to show you guys as much as I can. I want to show you guys literally the entire process, because I know a lot of videos cut a lot of stuff out. There's going to be a lot of times I cut this stuff out just to keep the videos from being too long, but this is not going to be as long of a video as part 1. So I feel like I can show you guys this. There is a faster machine for doing this kind of stuff that's available. However, this is not a complex model, and there was no real need to record on that one. So the only reason why I want you guys to see this is I want you to see the fact that you don't see the glow now, but once you see all of these samples up here, so we're at 256 out of 512. Once we get up to 512, you'll notice it does denoising. So it basically, you can kind of see it. You probably can't see it from YouTube, but I can see it from you. You can see a little bit of noise grain. So denoising will clean that up automatically because I turned it on in the render settings. And then after the denoising is finished, then the compositor will kick in and it will apply a glare filter to this image. So I want you to actually see that happen. So we're at 320 of 512. Because after we're done with this, the rest of the video is going to go pretty quick. There's really not much left to do from here. Only thing we'll have left is the spring and, like I said, that wind filter. So we'll do the spring before we do the wind filter, but I wanted you guys to see how cool this was. Also, that image I created, I will put a link for you to download it for free in the description of this video. It'll be on my Gumroad account. So if you guys just don't want to create it, I'll tell you what I used, to be honest with you. I used I took the logos or the little icons off the real one, and I went to fontawesome.io and matched them up as best I could. There was one icon that I had to basically take 2 icons and merge them into one with Illustrator, and that was the battery icon. It was like putting a lightning bolt inside the battery. But I basically took everything from Font Awesome and remade all of this. But to save you guys from having to do that, I'll provide that PNG for you. And you'll literally have the same image that I use in the video. All right, we're almost there, guys. 496 out of 512. Here we go. All right, so see the difference now? And it also added a little bit of bloom up here in the highlights of the wind filter, which is going to look really good. But you can clearly see right here, you can see that they're glowing now. So that's what I wanted to show you. So now we're good on that. All right. So now let's turn this around here. Let me get off the camera and get back on the body. There we go. That way it'll rotate around what I've got selected. All right, so now let's tackle this spring in here. This is gonna be super easy, guys. I'm not even gonna open up the panel down here for that. Let's go to the materials sidebar. I'm gonna hit new. I'm gonna hit material dot, I don't know, call it spring. And let's just crank the metallic all the way up. And I wanna crank down the roughness to where it looks about right. So 0.259. And we're done. Save it. Spring is finished. All right, so we're done with that. Yeah, it looks pretty good. It looks pretty much accurate too. So now, go back to front ortho, and I want to create a shader for the icosphere that's here at the top. So let's do that. Let's click on new again. I am going to have to bring up the panel here because we are going to need some nodes to pull this one off. Not much, but pull it down some so you guys can see. I'm trying to get this thing sized where you guys can see these panels down here, but still see what's happening to the geometry at the same time. All right, so we've got a principal BSDF here and then an output node. And first thing I want here is a color ramp, because the that wind filter's got a little bit of black in it, a little bit of gray in it. Kind of reminds me of a skunk a little bit, that coloring. I'm gonna hold down Control T, get rid of the texture, bring in the vector to the factor. So I'm bringing in a mapping and a texture coordinate node, and that's just Control T. If you got Node Wrangler set up, it's just is an easier way of doing it. So the magic in this comes from the color ramp here. So first thing I want to do is I want to leave this RGB in linear. I want to click this black here, change this color. I'm gonna bring it up. I'll give you guys actual color here in a minute. Give me 1 second. Let me pull that color from another file I've got open up here on another screen. Okay, so I'll give you guys a second to pull that hex value down here. All right. So what I want to do is I want to put 2 more color stops in here. So I'm going to do 1 and 2. The second color stop, let me grab that color. And I'm going to paste it right back down in here. And I'll give you that color. There you go. Give you a second to copy that. All right. Third color stop. Let me grab it. It's going to be a little darker. One thing will say I've noticed about Blender is a lot of these color stops are difficult sometimes to grab. I don't know if it's just me, but I found it very difficult to click on one of those sometimes. It just either didn't want to click on it or it doesn't take it at first. All right, there's that color. Okay, and then for the last one, let me grab it because I think it's the same. I think it's the same as the first one, but don't quote me on that. We'll see here in a second. And then there's that color. So now a couple other little tweaks here. So roughness, I cranked up the roughness a little bit to 0.819 because it doesn't need that hair doesn't have a whole lot of sheen off of it. All right, so the last thing I want to address here with this is I want to address the positions of these color stops. So this one here is at 0. This one here, I think we already addressed him, but let's double check. So this one here is at 0.266. The next one's position is, that's where that color stop is for that one. And then the last one is going to be at predictable 100 or 100% of the gradient. Yep. All right, so that should be it. Now, the last thing to do is put an embossment on the power button on the back. Let me shrink this down a little bit. See if I can get it in the light so y'all can see it. Actually, let me just do something real quick. Just add a light in here for the sake of the video so you can see it. So see, this button is pretty smooth. What I want to do is I want to have that little universal binary switch icon here, the 1 and the 0. All right, so now I've gone out, I went to Font Awesome, grabbed the power button icon. All right, so the last thing I want to tackle is this button. Very simple process. So essentially what I would do here, and I've done a lot of this work already, so I'm just going to show it to you, just so we don't make the video super long. So I selected all the faces. I essentially created a new layer by hitting Shift D and then going back to object mode, selecting the new layer that was selected, which essentially you'll see in my outliner here. And once that was done, I hit P to create a new layer. Let me turn it back on. And I'm going to show you, once you select that, what you want to do is you want to create a new set of materials for it. and you essentially assign that material to that new layer. And then here's the node setup. Took me a while to figure this out because for whatever reason with Blender, I have had the biggest problem figuring out an easy solution to take a transparent PNG in Cycles and basically apply it to a shape where the transparency goes across with no problem unless I make a separate layer. That's the only way I found around it. I know in Eevee you can do it easier through a setting, but in Cycles I've had nothing but an issue with it, and there's not really a straightforward video tutorial anywhere on YouTube that I've ever found that explains this. The only trick I've ever seen is people creating a new layer. So that was my solution to this. I had to go and solution this offline, and I'm just basically sharing the solution with you all here. So here's my node setup. So basically I created, I took an image texture, use that image in there, that the power button that I got from Font Awesome. I tied it into color, the color to color for the principal. Then I tied it into alpha to alpha, which basically made the entire background transparent, but it didn't affect the body of the microphone, which the button was a part of. That essentially, had we just applied it to the body would have had a hollow cavity where the button was. You would have been able to see inside of it. So that's why I went ahead and created a new layer to get around that problem, right? And then I created a bump texture, which looking back on it, I don't even need at this point. See, if I remove it, you don't even see it. So I can get rid of all of this. And I chose to use displacement since I was going ahead and going in there. So with displacement, what I ended up doing was I created, because this button didn't have a lot of geometry, I created on this new layer only, not on the original. That way, if I didn't like it, I could get rid of it and start over very quickly. On the button itself, I'm going to show it to you. See, it's almost fully yellow here. I created a level 3 subdivision and applied it to give us a lot of geometry. And then what I ended up doing was going back in and applying displacement. Now, since the power button was black and the transparency would have been white, I used an invert color to swap it. So I wanted the button itself to be white, because when I created my normal map, my displacement, that's the thing in white, just like an alpha channel in Photoshop. That's the thing that the effect is going to affect, if that makes sense. Anything white will see the effect applied to it. So then I just tweaked the values here and basically got a really nice embossed power button here, as you can see from here. And then I went back in, and you guys can take a look at this node setup. It's just fairly easy. This is the node setup for this. And see, even in the transparent areas here, it brought over the texture from the body. So let's see, let's bring this all the way down, bring this back out. I actually created a third camera just so we could kind of see what it would look like. Let me go here to this camera here. And in this camera, let me go in here and do a couple things while you guys are watching. Let me take my Passepartout and crank it all the way up so you can kind of see. You'll see what this looks like. Save my file and let's render this one out. I may not let the whole thing render, but you'll see what I'm going for here. But yeah, it took me a little bit of time offline to try to get up with a good solution for this, because this has been something I've been trying to figure out for. I've been using Blender for a little over 2 years now. This is something I've been trying to figure out for a while. And there's a lot of use cases that I have gotten this to work, but never really found a solid solution. So I'm thinking this new layer trick is going to be the best thing that for me that works. And in thinking about that solution, it makes sense, but it'd be real nice if I could essentially just put a bump texture or displacement on the actual button that's connected to the body of the mic, and then brought in an image texture, and then just basically said, okay, use this image as a mask and, you know, do transparency that way. But it, for whatever reason, it didn't work. It may have been me. I don't know yet. I will give this further investigation, but I did find a solution that worked, and that's what I wanted to come back and share with you all. So there is the button. This model is finished. So let me close this out. Let's go back and look at the model in a little bit more detail here. So we got the button we just looked at. Give me a second, let me select the body, and then when I rotate around, we don't have craziness going on. There's the clip. You can see the spring in there, and you can see the lighting from the HDRI reflecting in the clip. You can see, let me go back in a little bit. You can see the bump texture here. You can see the front, which right now I don't have the compositor turned on. Let me see something here. Because I'm not in, so if I go to always, now you see it. So now you can see the compositor effects applied to this too. So now you see a lot more light pop. You see that purple from that HDRI popping off of it. You can see that this is glowing. We can also see that this material here, this plastic, is shinier than the body. Good detail back in there. And we have the wind filter up here at the top. Good job, guys. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. But we're done with this one. Enjoy.